Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name is, of course,
My name is Seesaw. Your name is Chris.
who are you? What do you want? Hello? Anyways, today we're going to be playing Final Fantasy XIV in 2019, and today we finally get to talk about the Bard. Now, this is something that I thought I would have unlocked a long time ago, but I was really behind in my main scenario quests, and because of that, I could not become a Bard. And this is actually one of the first kind of minor complaints I have about Final Fantasy XIV, is it's a pretty weird thing to lock behind the main scenario quest. Now, I do get from a developer point of view that it's really nice to know, exactly what point everyone's gotten to in a story to be able to unlock a specific feature. Because it is nice because you can do a lot more with adding story to those features, knowing this, but it definitely, I don't know, it was first off very confusing because I got to level 30 and I was like, wait, why can't I do the Bard quest? And I had to kind of ask around and sort of whisper a few people in the Bard area, and eventually someone was like, hey, you actually have to be to a certain point in your main scenario quest. And then I went online and I looked up which quest this was, and it all made sense, and once I did that, it did work out. But it was definitely one of the more confusing points I've come across, specifically as a new player who you're maybe just trying to get your bearings and really understand the game, and you don't want things like this causing you chaos. Now, all that said, pretty much everyone you speak to when joining this game says, hey, make sure you stay up to date with your main scenario quests. It's like on your main character, obviously. And I did try to, but then I got wooed and swayed by all these fancy new features and the dungeons and the trials, and I was just getting levels, and I wanted to become a bard. We've all been there. So it was kind of my fault. It was confusing, but we're here now, which is perfect. So let's talk about it. I'm a really big fan of job advancement. Like, it's one of the main things I love in an MMO. When an MMO has a certain level that you do get to change into a new job, absolutely love it. The main reason for this is I played MapleStory as a kid, and one of the best parts of MapleStory, or at least pre-Big Bang MapleStory, was that at certain points, your character would get a job advancement. And I say pre-Big Bang specifically because I really enjoyed how, once you got to level 30 on a magician, you would specialize as an ice lightning magician, as a fire poison magician, as a cleric. It was one of the coolest systems I'd ever seen, and I do miss it. Out of all the things I miss about MapleStory, that's the biggest one. So having a jobs advancement system in this game is a really big plus for me. And I do understand that there is one specific job that does branch out, but that they've moved away from that because it has added a lot of confusion around balancing the job itself. And I get that. I do understand that it's probably adds a lot more complexity to the game. And of all the things that MapleStory is great for, balance definitely wasn't one of them. So I do get that it's probably better to have everyone balanced out. So I do enjoy what they've done just with the very single job advancement. So you go from level 1 to 30 as an archer, and then at level 30 you get to become a bard, which is very cool. It's also really cool. You get kind of a little job soul stone that you put into your equipment slot, and that's how you activate the bard job. So it does feel very tangible in that way, which makes a lot of sense because in this game you can switch between jobs, and the idea of having these different soul stones that you activate make a lot of sense thematically with that. In terms of the job itself, I'm definitely really enjoying the archer and liking what the bard brings to the table. The main thing you'll see is that you do get a fancy new little piece of UI, which is kind of like a minstrel's, or a bard's, I guess, little musical instrument. And on that, you'll sort of see the cooldown of your different songs as you play them. And you only get one at the start, which I think is just a mana regen one. I actually haven't looked at it that much, but you just get to play it every so often, and I believe there's a chance for some of my dots to refresh its cooldown. You can see that I'm not a very experienced bard, and if you have any tips for being an experienced bard, please put them in the comments below. I always like learning, and I'm getting more and more self-conscious about my rotations as we get into higher content. I know I'm still very much in the training section of the game. I was doing air quotes there. I don't know why I did them because you guys can't see them, but there was some serious air quotes going on. And that the game actually gets a lot more demanding the further you go. So it's always best to start working on those rotations early on, and that way it just feels natural when you eventually get to the point where it actually matters, right? So I think it's really cool. From what I understand, I'll continue learning different songs that I can play, and with those songs I sort of buff allies and myself, and I'm kind of a DPS support class, which is really perfect, and it's something that a lot of games miss out on. I remember specifically Rift used to have a bard, and I think it was actually like its own sub like role. Like there was actually a DPS, a healer, a tank, and a support class in that game, and the bard was that, where they would actually be able to heal a significant amount and buff a significant amount and DPS a significant amount. And I don't know how that ended up as the game went on, but it was a really unique thing that they did at the time. So I'm very excited to see that there is something of that vein in this game where you do have a bit of support, because I do think that's a really nice thing to bring to the table. Now, the actual job advancement itself was pretty quick, and I was actually expecting this really big chain of quests or instances, because some of the other job quests before this were actually a lot more complex or lengthy than this one was. This one I really just had to go find someone and convince them to train me as a bard, and it was a pretty cool story, where he kind of thinks that you're after him just to become a really good archer, and that he's kind of more crazy and whimsical now, but it is that music that we're after. So it was a really interesting character that you get to meet, and I am excited to see how the quests progress with him and see where they go, because that is another big thing that Final Fantasy brings to the table, at least that people have told me, is that the job quests do get much more interesting as you get further on through the game, and it is something that continues fairly regularly, where they have switched up different elements of the job quests, or how often they come, or if they're role specific or job specific. They switch some of those up in the expansions, but it is something that's very a part of the game the whole way through. And I think that's so good when so many MMOs these days are lacking proper class identity. I mean, we can look at and talk about World of Warcraft all the time, but when you're playing WoW, there's such a trouble these days of actually super caring about your class identity. And it's a big issue because in Battle for Azeroth, there just really hasn't been much progression, especially when you contrast it to the most recent expansion before that, the Legion expansion, where we had different actual full-on stories for our classes. We have class halls and stuff like that, and a weapon specific to your spec. There was so much lore for the classes that it feels so much worse in this expansion. It's been something they've been struggling with the whole time, and the classes and the sense of progression for the character is one of the most, if not the most important parts to an MMO. Because if you truly enjoy leveling your character and feeling that sense of progression, it doesn't matter as much how boring the game is, how repetitive it is, and really, that's one of the main reasons I enjoy MapleStory. Because above all, my sense of progression was so big that it didn't matter that I was just grinding out against snails for hours on end back when I played it. It was just such a cool thing to see how my character changed as I get different job advancements and learn new skills. It's that sense of wonder that the class needs to bring to the game. So all this said, I'm very excited to see how the bard progresses, how it changes, how it evolves as I get more skills, because it definitely seems like a class that will get more complex as you get more songs to rotate through, and with that, it'll feel much more unique and very rewarding when you do get those new skills. Because I'm already at this point, I'm like, okay, I've got my one song, but it kind of doesn't do too much. So I'm really excited to get to that next song and see what that does and continue on that way. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Bard. I'd love to hear your opinions on jobs specifically. Like I say, if you are a Bard, drop down some sweet tips for me down there. If you have a job that you just love and think that it's one of the most unique things in Final Fantasy XIV, I'd love to hear that too, because I am actively dreaming of the next job I'm going to play, and I'd love to hear your own thoughts on that. But thank you for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit shorter because it was just kind of a video I've talked about the Bard now in several of the last few videos, and this is finally the one that I'm able to be like, hey, I've got it. But there you go. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.